In this video, we're going to help you establish which GM you should pick in WWE 2K23's My GM. We're going to break down all of the power cards, and I'm going to rank each GM in terms of how good they are, starting from worst to best. But first, let's quickly look at all of the power cards that are available before we start ranking them. So we have Adam Pearce, first of all. He has the Instigator power card, which was the same as last year's, where you increase all active rivalry levels by 1. We have Sonya Deville, who received a much needed buff this year, where power cards in the store are free for the week. Stephanie McMahon, the same as last year again, the McMahon presents. You earn twice as much money from arena attendance this week. Xavier Woods, the cheat code card. Select a superstar from an opposing brand's roster and they will permanently join your roster next week. So you basically steal someone from an opposing roster, but it can't be a title holder and it can't be used in week 1. We have Tyler Breeze, the quick recovery card, where all superstars immediately recover 20 stamina. Kurt Angle, the Heart of Gold card. All charity promos are free to book and have their results doubled this week. Eric Bischoff, the backstage booking card, where all booking costs for the show logistics are free this week. Mick Foley, Cactus Jacked. You select an opposing brand and 2 superstars who participate in their next show will be injured at random. And finally, you have the custom superstar, who has the Legend Whisperer card that was on the last game, but it wasn't the custom superstar card, where the first legend you sign this week will be free. So what we're going to do is we are going to rank these from worst to best, and it's going to be my opinion, obviously, but a lot of it is backed up with numbers. So firstly, the worst GM, F tier, no doubt about it, is Kurt Angle, the Heart of Gold card, where all charity promos are free to book this week and have their results doubled. So why is this card so bad? Well, firstly, charity promos aren't particularly expensive. They cost $10,000 to book, and they gain you 5,000 fans. So, when you are booking these, assuming that you put on a charity promo in all 3 promo slots in a normal week, or in all 4 promo slots on a PLE, it saves you $30,000 to $40,000, and it doubles the results. Charity promotions gain you a guaranteed 5,000 fans, so it doubles them to 10. So you basically gain an extra, assuming again that you fill out all of the promo slots with charity promos, you gain 15,000 fans in a normal week, or 20,000 fans if you use this on a PLE. However, that does some damage to the rest of your card. Obviously, it means you have less variety if every single slot is a charity appearance, and it just doesn't really save you very much money. $30,000 to $40,000 can be a lot at the start, but it just isn't that much, and I think it's not going to be the decisive factor between winning and losing. And a lot of the other GMs, importantly, have much stronger cards compared to this, so I think pretty clearly Kurt Angle is the worst GM in the game at the moment. In E tier, the next worst GM is your custom superstar, getting to sign a legend for free in the week. This actually isn't too bad, and in future seasons it could be more valuable, especially where drafting gets a little bit harder because the superstars become more expensive as they've gained popularity in the season. It can be a little bit tricky to put a good roster together on a budget in future years. At the start, it could also be useful again, but let's think about this logically. Think about this in terms of numbers. The most expensive legend that you can possibly get on a 10-week contract is around $130,000. You can already see how this is better than Kurt Angle's, by the way. He's saving like $30,000 or $40,000 on your custom superstar. You're actually saving like $130,000 at most, assuming you signed the best legend on a 10-week contract, which is pretty useful, obviously. But we do have to consider the fact that after those 10 weeks, and you should always use it on a 10-week contract, by the way, I should point that out. Don't ever use this on a 5-week contract because that just reduces the value of it so much. After those 10 weeks are up, you then have to renew the contract of that legend, and they can be really expensive to do this. So having this card might actually make you sign a legend when you weren't already going to sign one, and that gives you future costs that you have to somehow account for. Obviously, you don't have to do it that way, and you might have signed a legend anyway. And because of this, because of the knock-on impact that it gives you down the line, I'm putting this in E tier. It might be D tier, maybe, but I'm going to put it in E tier. Next up, in D tier, we have Eric Bischoff. All booking costs for this week are free. This can be very useful if you're really tight on cash. Just getting to save little bits of money here and there can be really useful, but Eric Bischoff's card is pretty useless in the earlier seasons. It can be useful for your arena cost, but firstly, you have to pay to unlock all of the slots. This doesn't cover the unlock costs. It only covers the actual show logistic costs for the week. And in the first season, your crew, your advertising, special effects, they only cost like $10,000. It's not very much at all. Further down the line, this becomes useful if you think like season 4, season 5, season 6, etc. In the earlier weeks when you're getting to book the big logistics for free, this becomes really useful. However, in those earlier seasons, it's just really not very effective, and overall, it's just a less effective version of another GM that we haven't covered yet, but we will do. I think this is a D tier card. I think it's absolutely exceptional if you're going to be playing 5 or 10 seasons into the future, but in those earlier seasons, you're going to be falling behind. You're going to be playing catch up because some of the other cards are just so much better than this in the early game. It's a D tier for me. Going into C tier now, we have Mick Foley and his Cactus Jacked card. This card can be extremely annoying. You select an opposing brand and 2 superstars who participate in their show next week will be injured at random. I have been on the receiving end of this card multiple times already, and it is really frustrating. What it does is it makes you overthink your show. You try not to use any of your superstars that actually matter. You might sign free agents to pad your card out, which gives you more problems down the line because you have to then release them and you can only release 1 per week. You don't want to sacrifice your rivalries. You want to keep building your rivalries up for the pay-per-view, and Mick Foley comes in and gets 2 of your superstars injured. The 2 times so far that I've actually had this happen to me, they've been really bad injuries. I've seen 3-week injuries, 4-week injuries, even a 6-week injury, which is absolutely massive, especially if you use this early on. So my advice, if you're being Mick Foley, you want to use this early in the season because it just makes it way more difficult to manage. You don't have the money to sign other legends or good free agents to replace them. You don't have injury cards saved up. In season 1, this is especially useful. As the seasons progress, you probably will have some injury cards stacked up. So Mick Foley's card isn't that good. It kind of mostly injures them just for 1 season. So because this is so useful in season 1 and can still be useful in season 2, but probably not very useful season 3 and beyond, I'm putting this in C tier. This one's also really good if you're just playing against one opponent, especially a human opponent where you actually get to see their reaction. But if you're playing against 3 different AIs, it's not great, to be honest. Also in C tier, we have Sonya Deville. Last season was an F tier for me. This year, I think Sonya is somewhat useful. Power cards in the store are free for a week. Here's the issue with this card. A lot of the time, to be honest, all of the time, you're almost never going to get 3 power cards that you actually want to buy. Some of the power cards are really expensive. They could be like $75,000, which would be $150,000 if you had a double cost card applied to you. And sometimes it might be a really useful card. It might be a special promotion, which are really overpowered, especially in later seasons. But some of the cards that cost $75,000, like giving a superstar a really big boost to their morale, like, yeah, it's good, but you're never really going to buy that, so it's not actually saving you $75,000 because you wouldn't have ever bought it anyway, realistically. And if you have that kind of money to splash on a card like that, then you don't really need to get it for free. There will be certain occasions where 3 amazing power cards appear in the store. Let's say you had like a special promotion card, you might have like a big boost to a tables or an Extreme Rules match card, and you might have like a Health Spa 3 card or something like that where all 3 of those are really good. And if it's early in the season where money is tight, this card could be crucial. And having this in your locker for the earlier weeks in every single season could be really good, but so much of it comes down to chance, and an unlikely chance at that, and a lot of the other GM cards are better. I think this is another C tier card. Going into the B tier, we have Tyler Breeze, the quick recovery card that gives you 20 extra stamina on all of your superstars. I think this card is actually really good. Personally, I think my best skill in my GM is managing stamina, and I've still already played a couple of saves through with Tyler Breeze, and I find his stamina card really useful. For those of you that aren't good at managing stamina, you might actually think that this helps, but realistically, I don't think it helps that much, because if you're bad at managing stamina, it's only really going to save you for like 1 week or 2 weeks. And what this card is actually good for is setting you up for multiple future weeks of success. So if we think about what 20 stamina actually gains you, a normal match, you're only going to lose 1 stamina in that. A tables match, you won't lose very much. An Extreme Rules, you might lose a little bit more stamina, but again, you're not losing very much. Having the ability to recover 20 stamina, it allows you to put on extra tables matches, extra Extreme Rules matches for the same rivalries, and over many, many weeks, this helps their rivalries build up. it helps you get higher match ratings for those matches, and it helps you put on better shows as well. So this isn't actually just like a 1 week Xavier card where you get to immediately put on a bigger show because you can put people in TLCs and Hell in a Cells, etc. That is not the best way to use this. The best way to use it is to make sure you can keep the same superstars appearing in your cards week after week so that they can build their popularity as well, because resting superstars is one of the worst things you can do on this. It's why you need to operate with as small of a roster as possible, because when they don't appear in a card, they lose quite a bit of popularity. I've seen them lose like as high as 11 or 12 popularity just by not appearing in a card for a week. So what this does is extremely valuable for a lot of weeks, and that's why I think this card is actually B tier. Even though it doesn't appear as strong as some of the others that we've already covered, I think it's still really good, and I leave it in B tier on its own. Next up, we have 2 A tier cards, starting with Adam Pearce. Last year, I thought this was the best card on the game. I don't think it's quite as strong this year just because of some of the buffs to the other cards, but Adam Pearce, the ability to increase all active rivalries by 1 is so useful. Getting to use it at a point where you really need to build your rivalries up and have that benefit knocking on for multiple weeks. Again, like with Tyler, you can make this work for multiple weeks, so you don't want to use this just to push your rivalries from level 3 to level 4. The best way to use this really is like a few weeks before a pay-per-view. Have your level 1 rivalries bumped up to level 2 and have your level 2s bumped up to level 3. This way, you're getting multiple weeks of benefit. You're going to have 1 extra level rivalry for like 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks. Have them culminate in a pay-per-view or a PLE as they're called on this year's edition of the game. Again, I think this is actually a really strong card, especially if you're using it in like the 2nd or 3rd PLE where you can actually use it to get a really big advantage over your opponents, and you can have like 5 or 6 different rivalries that all have level 1 or above. You don't want to use this at the first PLE just to get your first 3 or 4 rivalries boosted. You want to use this at a time when you can really maximize it, because what happens if one of your rivals vetoes your superstar? That would be really annoying if you'd planned to use this or already used it in the first PLE. So I think this is a really useful card for multiple weeks. For that reason, I actually think it's A tier. It might be B tier, maybe, but I'm putting it in A tier. And another A tier GM is Xavier Woods. Getting the ability to steal a superstar from an opposing roster is extremely overpowered in my opinion. The best way to use this, without doubt, is as early on as possible. You want to be using it in week 2, week 3 to steal basically the most popular or the most expensive superstar from another roster. The reason that this is so powerful when used early on is because you can save a little bit of money in your draft, or you can spend a little bit more on your superstars in your draft to have them higher popularity and therefore more effective for you, and you can then steal a superstar that cost a lot of money to another brand, get them for free on your side, and it also wastes like the most expensive superstars in season 1, they're like $230,000, $240,000, $250,000 to draft. As you progress through the seasons, the most expensive superstars get more and more expensive to draft. They're like well over $300,000 just after 1 season. Getting to use that every single year is so effective because you're basically stealing 300k potentially off an opposing roster. But it doesn't just stop there, because that roster, that brand, then has to replace that superstar. So they've spent all this money on them, and then they're going to be struggling to put on shows. So they're going to have to sign a free agent, or they're going to have to sign a legend. They're going to have to commit to paying weekly contracts or sign someone permanently for a lot of money. The damage that this can do to someone else, as well as having a lot of benefit for your brand, is a solid reason to put this in A tier for me. The only reason that I don't think this is S tier is because later on in the seasons, I don't think it has that much of an effect, and also the fact that it can't be used on title holders and can't be used in week 1. Anyone smart that faces up against Xavier is going to make sure in week 1 they've got tag team titles on the line in the male and female division. They're going to get the extra men's title on the line. They're going to have the world title on the female and male. They're going to have a lot of different superstars blocked that you can't steal. So that's the only reason for me that it's not S tier, but I think it's still really good. And that just leaves one GM who I believe is actually the best on this game, and it is Stephanie McMahon. Season 1, actually not that useful. It is pretty good. You want to wait until week 20 where you've unlocked the 5th biggest stadium, or the 5th biggest arena, and using this card will gain you an extra $340,000 versus not using it, which is obviously really useful, but 20 weeks into a season, 340k it's helpful, but it's not everything. everything. However, getting the ability to use this in Season 2, in Season 3, in Season 4, in the early weeks to get an extra 340k, it's like similar to the Xavier Woods card where you're stealing 300k off someone. You're gaining 340k in cash to spend how you want. After Season 4 as well, where you've actually unlocked the even bigger stadium, it's worth like an extra $1 million. It is such a hugely valuable card that it has to go in S tier. Even though I think a lot of the cards are actually more valuable in Season 1, Stephanie's card, Season 2 and beyond, if you're going to be playing a 10 season career or longer, Stephanie's is just unbelievably overpowered, and that's why Stephanie is an S tier GM and the only one in my opinion. Now that you know what the best GM is, you need to know what the best brand is to pick. I've put a video on screen that will run through all of that for you now.